Hi, my name is Carina and welcome to the Carina Chronicles. Today I'm going to tell you which books I've read in February and if I actually managed to finish my ridiculous February TBR of 10 books and with that broke my record of reading books in 1 month. Did I? Let me tell you. So, the big reveal, I didn't finish the 10 books. And that's actually more disappointing to me than I had anticipated, because the reading went really well this month. And I was almost a week before the end of February where I finished 8 books and I haven't read since. And that is so crazy because my reading flow was incredible. I had not finished that many books in such a long time and I liked most of them, so it was all going great, but this last week I've just neglected the reading. It's not that I'm not excited about the books that I had left. I am excited about the books that I have left, but it was just enough. It was also a crazy week. I just couldn't really get my head to it. So only 8 books, but I'm still really proud. It's not my record, mine is my record still, and the record stands, but 8 books, and the books that I really needed to finish this month, I did finish. So let's go through them, because 8 is quite a lot to put in one video, so let's quickly start. The book that we all knew I was going to finish, because I only had like 30 pages left or something when I made my TBR video, is Stone Blind by Nathalie Haynes, or how it's called in Dutch, De Blik van Medusa. This is a Greek retelling, a feminist Greek retelling about Medusa, and you follow Medusa from all woman perspectives around her, but also leading up to meeting her. This story actually doesn't focus as much on Medusa as you would expect looking at the title, especially the Dutch title where it's even like in the name Medusa, and the undertitle is This is Medusa's Story, which it kind of is, because it starts with Medusa and it ends when Medusa's story is kind of over, but in between you follow a lot of women and also some objects and nature things like flowers or stuff like that, all probably with, I didn't check this, but I think they will have like feminine origin in the Greek language, the ancient Greek language, because, well, they made a point out of it to do only female perspectives. And they say Madeline Miller actually was inspired by Nathalie Haynes because of these stories. And well, for that I want to thank her, because Madeline Miller is one of my favorite authors of all time, for sure. So yeah, I want to thank her for that, and I understand why this is an inspiration to people, because it's a great story, but it's rough. There are some trigger warnings here, and I also feel like it's not as lyrical as Madeline Miller. It's way more straightforward, just hitting you right at your core. Like, there's no softening it at all in this story. And that's made it less fun for me. Like, it's not that it's therefore worse, it's just less entertaining. Like, Madeline Miller isn't soft, but I was enjoying myself because of the language, and I wasn't really in this one. I just thought it was a really good story. And I also really like to delve into the Greek mythology again, because I forgot a lot, and this one really was like, oh yeah, and then we have this story and that story. Oh yeah, that's where Medusa comes in again. So I really liked it, but just not as much as Madeline Miller. So this is a 4-star rating for me. But I will pick up more of her books, because I finished all Madeline Miller's books that are currently out. So I need something that is quite similar to her, and well, I think this is the closest I get. So I will read other books by her. Then for the manga, graphic novel, comic thing that I try to read one every month, I decided to read Winx Club, the first volume, Welcome to Magix. This just has been published like in January of this year. It's obviously like a republishing, but because there were actual comics and they are not being published anymore, so I really couldn't get them. So when I wanted to order them, I found out there was actually a new one that came out in January, and the second volume will be out on my birthday in June in 2024. So they are going to republish all these volumes probably, and I thought, okay, let's give it a try. Don't do it. If you love the story, don't do it. They left things out, they screwed things up because there were some mistakes in here with names and stuff, which was weird. I don't mean that they used different names, I just mean that they were talking to each other and calling each other the wrong name, which is weird. And they skipped the whole prologue. So if you haven't watched Winx and have it somewhere in your mind still, you don't understand a thing about the story. Because you just jump right in. They just go to the magical school. Which is really weird, because it's a really big part of the story that Bloom didn't know this magical school existed. Bloom is the main character, and she didn't know this magical school existed and that she had magic, but then she figures out, she's got told by Stella, the blonde one, that she is, and that she needs to go to the magical school to get it under control. And then they go there, and then a lot of things happen. But well, we skip all that. We just see that they arrive at the school and she says bye to her parents, and there's no character development. There are mistakes, there are things left out. It's nothing similar to the original story. Am I going to read volume 2? Obviously. I felt so in the mood to read this, and I just want to delve back into the Winx world. And I know there's a Netflix series that's been out, like a live action one, but I don't dare to watch it. I think I want to only watch it after I've read the volumes and feel like I've read enough to won't be spoiled anymore. I gave this 2 stars, but as I said, I will read volume 2 most probably. So doesn't matter. You don't have to write a good book to entertain me and to keep me reading and buying your books, apparently. The next one is so different. Vallen is als vliegen by Manon Uphoff, a Dutch literary fiction, is how it's promoted and sold. I do not agree. I think this is a discussion for a whole other time. But I think if someone writes a story that is so autobiographical, and there's no magic in there, the things that happened actually happened, but you write it in a more lyrical way or something, that doesn't make it fiction, in my opinion. Or maybe you change some names or something. I understand that it is not pure non-fiction anymore, but it doesn't read differently than an autobiography. So I was going into this expecting something completely different. I knew it would be a harsh story, I've heard that. And trigger warnings are well into place here, because it's actually about sexual child abuse and other abuse. And the author unfortunately encountered this herself her whole youth, and she wrote a book about it. And it's very well done, it's written very well. But again, I don't think this is literary fiction. So as literary fiction, I didn't think it was that good. Because it was straight to the point. Like, she did write it beautiful, but there was no way you didn't see what was happening here. And there was also not really a plot. It was just telling what happened to her. And I felt really weird reading this. So it wasn't bad per se, actually it was written very well, but I wouldn't recommend this to anyone, and definitely not as like literary fiction entertainment. Like, do you understand what I mean? It's difficult to explain, but I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I first gave it 4 because it's written very well, but then I was like, no, this really doesn't serve the purpose of how they promote this book. I really don't think it deserves 4 stars, so I gave it 3. Which was unfortunate because I expected more of it. Which is going to be a theme for the next books as well, so hold on to that. Because the next book that I read was Vengeful by Schwab. Schwab is one of my favorite authors, and Vicious, which I read last year, was one of my favorite books of the year. This is the sequel, and even though I don't think it's bad at all and I've enjoyed my time, I think Vicious should have been a standalone. Like, we would of course have been sad because we want more, and I'm never complaining if Schwab writes more books, and especially not about characters that we love. But this book wasn't really it. Like, I loved Marcella. I don't want to spoil Vicious for you because you really need to read this. So I'm not going to say very much about Vengeful. But we get introduced to a new character, Marcella, and I did love her. But she really felt like out of the blue character to be able to write a sequel. It really felt like Vicious was a standalone, and she wrote Vengeful just for the fans and needed to get a story. So she just created Marcella, and there came the story. And that was, well, not what I liked actually. And also I know that the 3rd part, Victorious, has been announced. And this part ends weird. Like, this is not really a spoiler because you really wouldn't know what I say means. But if you really don't want to know anything, you shouldn't listen to this, obviously. I will make, like, it's a short thing that I'm going to say. And it's, I promise you, I don't think it's spoilery. But this ends with, like, an open ending to leave things open for part 3. But it also is close enough that I wouldn't be really satisfied. But she could, like, explain herself like, yeah, well, it's just finished. Like, this is just how it ends. We don't know everything about everyone, but the story is over. So it feels like she kind of like made an escape route or something, that it will be a 3rd book, but if she's not able to write it because she doesn't know how the story will continue, that she just won't write it because this has an ending in some way. And I think that's kind of weak. I mean, we know she's great, so just be brave and end this on a cliffhanger or something. But I do think that if there will be a 3rd part, this might just have suffered from middle book syndrome. Because we do have like this thing where at the beginning of the story you're like, shouldn't the 1st part have been a standalone? And then at the end of the story, the characters are somewhere else and some characters have developed and you have a new starting point for a good book, you know? So it really feels like that, and I am so disappointed because I thought this was going to be a 5-star for sure, and it is a 4-star now. And 4 stars are great, but not all 4 stars are the same. Like, some 4 stars feel like a hidden gem, and this 4-star feels like a loss, because Vicious was such a 5-star read. So, yeah. Disappointing, I would say. The next one that I read was actually a book that I got from my TBR jar, and I ended up reading it at my job. And that is The Echoman by Holland, a wonderful author that I met in January. And this is a thriller. Really, please believe me, look up all the trigger warnings, because everything that you can get triggered by is in here. Like, everything. It's so violent, it's so cruel, and so graphic as well. This is really not for everyone. I have never read a thriller like this before, but I knew beforehand that this would be one. And to be honest, it doesn't really add anything for me. Like, I wouldn't explicitly look it up or something. But I think the story was written very well and the characters were also kind of interesting. So I didn't really mind either. But it was bad. Like, I was glad that I read it at my job, and that is like during daytime. I wouldn't read this before I go to bed because I think my mind would go crazy on me. There were a little too many plot twists in the end. Like, the first one I didn't see coming. Well, slightly. Then the second one I didn't see coming. The third one I really didn't see coming. And the fourth one or something, I was like, okay, but there's no way I could have seen this coming anymore because there are so many plot twists that the whole story, like, it does fit, but how could I have known, you know? So I thought that was a bit of a shame, but it is like a debut novel, so, well, not really a debut novel. She has a pseudonym as well, or this is her pseudonym actually. But in this way of writing, like this cruel, cruel thriller, which is almost horror kind of thingy. So I did give it 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I really wanted to finish the book. I had a hard time putting it down. So that's all great. I know that this is a series, but all books are like standalones, and eventually she will have a book that combines them all. There are also standalones about different characters, so they're really standalones. Not like, oh, there's an overshadowing plot that you don't need to follow. No, they're different characters completely. So they're really standalones, but in the end she will have a book that combines them. She said so. So this is the first book. I own the second book already. I will read it, and the third book will is already out, but in Dutch will come out, I believe, next year or in fall of this year or something. So I will read those, and I'm curious to see how it will all add up in the end. 4 out of 5 stars, as I said. Then we have a book that I also thought would be 5 stars, but wasn't, again. And that is The Secret History by Donna Tart. Which, as you see, I've annotated it. I still need to cut them, but I first want to write my full review because I'm reading this with friends and we're doing a Dark Academia experiment and I need to write some more about it. So I didn't cut the tabs yet. I love this book. It's so pretentious. I could make a whole video about this, which I'm actually probably going to do after we did the whole Dark Academia experiment. I will just go into details about the Dark Academias and our point system and everything because I think that would be great. But for now, what I think is I just loved it. It was the first time I actually read a book that I really felt that it had Dark Academia vibes, because the other books I read were not really what I considered to be Dark Academia. So this really fitted it perfectly. The pacing was a little off. I know my friends think it's very off, but I think it was okay, but a little off. The chapters are so long and sometimes they really didn't need to be. And there's just one character, Julian, which is kind of a mentor-teacher kind of person in this book that I thought was written quite bad. Actually, really compared to the rest, you wonder, how is this even possible? Like, they're not the same. How is this possible? So that made me actually drop my rating from 5 stars to 4. Because I think he is so bad and he does play a big part in the story. I couldn't give it 5 stars. And also the pacing, slightly off. So not the best of the best, but I did really like it. I loved discussing things about it, and we will discuss more, and I even love that more, the idea of that. So I did really like that I read this. I will also read it in Dutch, because I'm just really curious, and I think this is a perfect book to do so with. Also because I'm studying editing, and I think it's interesting to see how they translated and edited this differently. So yes, I want to see that. So I did really love it, and if I compare it to other 4-star books, so for example Vengeful or The Echoman, this is objectively written a lot better. Like, this is a very great book, but I still rate it on my enjoyment. Like, the 1 to 5 stars is not relative to the other books, it's relative to my enjoyment that this book could have achieved in some way. So this book is objectively better than anything, than anything that I've read this month, but just not the most enjoyable one, and there were mistakes that were unforgivable to me. So 4 out of 5 stars therefore. Then we have a book that it might be my fault that I didn't really enjoy it that much. It's Dutch YA fantasy. It's called Het Lied van Ariane by Petra. This is a very loosely based Greek retelling, and it's about a magic system where they use magic via making music. So there's a lot of words with M, and I really got confused there. But that sounds like really my cup of tea, because I am a musical person. I make music all the time, and my whole family is all about music. And I love Greek mythology, so this sounded perfect. Also, I love YA and I love fantasy, so I don't think there could have been a book that was more up my alley than this one. But I think I screwed it up myself, because I read only like 20 pages per week, because it was at my job where I'm not that often. Like, I'm often at my job, but there are 2 different locations, and at one I'm not that often. So I read like 20 pages per week, and it's more than 400 pages book. So this took me very long, and I didn't really get into the story because of that. In the end, I was invested, and I did like the magical system, and I did think that the characters were very interchangeable. They were just all the same, which I thought was a shame. So in the end I gave it 3 stars, which is quite generous for how bored I was sometimes, but I really think that's because of how I read it. And just looking at how I liked the ending and just how invested I was, I feel like it still deserves a 3 star. I own the second part of this series already, so I think I will try to read that in more like one go or something, and see how it works out, if I like it better, because I think I will. I think this was my fault, but 3 out of 5 stars. And then my favorite book of the year so far. Such a surprise, because I knew people loved the book, but I didn't know I would love the book so much. And that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is the ultimate book about love, and I don't mean romantical love per se, even though it's in here as well, but it's just the love that people can feel for each other in so many different ways. We're following 2 people, and we follow them since they're children, or well, they are already a little bit older when the story starts, but with the flashbacks we still see them as children as well. Until they're like in the end of their 30s or something, and they become friends, and they just, well, they're not falling in love with each other per se, but they just love each other, and they try to get each other through the difficult things they need to go through during their lives. And it's written so beautifully. Really, do yourself a favor and read this, because I loved it so much. I do know this is right up my alley, because these people are going to make a game together, and they're also talking about women in a technical branch where it's mainly men dominated, and how to go through that. And I've studied applied physics, so I know how it is to be a girl within a very large group of men, and a field that is just ruled by men all the time. I know that feeling. I know that I love games, and the references that are in here, I understand them. So it was right up my alley. It might not be for everyone, but for me, crazy. I really, really love this book. I gave it obviously 5 out of 5 stars, and I think it will be hard to beat for at least a few months. Maybe there will be like this random... I hope I will read more 5-star books this year. I read one in January, which was really good, but like compared to this one, I could give it 3 stars as well. It's just like, this is out of the scale. I really loved it. It's already a contestant to be my favorite book of the year in February. So great. So maybe that got me in the reading slump, because I was like, these other books won't compare. Why would I even try to read more books in February? I've made my highest. It's done. So that might have been the case. But actually this was it. 8 books out of 10. The books that I needed to finish, I finished. So I think we can say I did alright, right? I'm going to try to read as many books as possible again in March, but it's a little bit less mandatory, because I had a lot of book club meetings and stuff this month. So a lot of books that I really needed to finish, and that's not the case next month. So this was actually it. A lot of talking. I'm sorry that this video probably took way too long. I need to get used again to not talking too much. Anyway, this was it. I really hope you liked this video. If you did, please leave a like. And if you subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell, you will be notified whenever I post a new video. I hope you'll have a lovely day filled with books, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye! There's actually so much more that I wanted to say, but I think I will keep those things for my next video, which will be kind of a vlog, because it became too much. This video is already so long, so you will have to wait for it.